Today we are going to learn on trematode, aka flukes, and from the name you can get the idea that it's like a pipe, so it's flukes. And this is a picture showing a fluke. It is you can see it's flat, it's long, and inside are some of the structures, organs. First, we are going to recognize different worms. They have different shape, and then life cycle fundamentals, and then about the diagnosis, including clinical presentation and diagnostic testings. Next is about the epidemiology, and then control and treatment options. There are 4 kind of flukes we're going to talk about, and their scientific name are on the left, and where they are living inside the human body is listed on the right. The first one is clonorhis sinensis. Is a very tiny flukes, and it's like to live in the liver and the hepatic bile duct. So this one is called the liver fluke. The next one is Fasciolopsis busci. It lives in the small intestine, so it's also called intestinal fluke. The third one, we are going to give more time to the Westermanni. The Paragonimus westermanni prefer to live in the lung tissue, so it's called the lung fluke. The last one is the Schizosoma japonicum. It's like to live in the haploportal system, so it's called the blood flukes. And according to their living habitats, and their shapes are different. For example, the one live in the small intestine. It has a very large space to live. So their body is larger, and the eggs are large, and they are flat. It's like the pink meat ginger slice. And the last one is blood fluke. Is living in the blood vessel. So they are very slim and long, and there's a sucker to make sure they are sticky to the blood vessel, and then the whole body is floating in the vessel. So later we're going to go one by one to learn them. So some general features of the trematode. They are leaf-like flattened bodies with no body cavity, so they don't have body cavity. They have oral and ventricle suckers to attach to their host. So commonly they were called flukes. And on the left you can see different shape and different size of the flukes. And they all are very flat. They are all flat, and they all have suckers to attach to the host. So this is a picture showing the general feature, and so both of the so there's one body containing 2 sets of the reproductive organs, and with the exception of the blood flukes. So the other 3 we are going to talk about, they are hermaphrodite, and the blood fluke, there's a female and a male. So this is the difference. This is the body of the other 3. You can see they have the ovary and they have the testes at the same time. They have oral sucker, and they have an excretory pole. Their life cycle. So the life cycle for the flukes, it's very complex. so they enjoy the induct life cycle. Usually, they need 1 or 2 intermediate hosts. So these fluids, they are all biohelminths. And the first intermediate hosts are usually freshwater snail. So the picture in red is showing 3 different kind of freshwater snails, and inside they are the intermediate hosts for different fluids. And on the left, this is the general life cycle of the fluids. So first, we will start from the definitive host, and for sure they live adulthood in the definitive host, and then from the definitive host, the eggs were pooped out, whether from the anus or from other ways to get outside the system, and then they get inside the water. And in the water, the larvae stage have different looks different, and then the larvae have different names. For example, the merocidium and the sporocyst, rhidia, and then these stages happens in the first intermediate host. And after some time, the larvae get outside the first intermediate host and then get inside the second intermediate host. This is a free living stage. It happens in the water, and the larvae stage is called Sarcaria. And then they found the second intermediate host and get inside. And then it's only when the second intermediate host was eaten by human being, and then the parasite can get inside the human being or other definitive host, and then they can finally develop into the adulthood stage. Other features in trematode life cycle, in the trematode eggs are not an ovum, but the developed embryo enclosed by a smooth hard shell or capsules. So it's outside is in the shape of the egg, but inside there is actually developed embryo. It's just enclosed in the capsule or in this very hard shell. And so for all the fluids, the eggs have operculum. So there's a cap. It's just except for blood fluid. So blood fluid is distinguished from other fluids we are going to learn. Blood fluid has two genders, female and male, and their eggs do not have operculum, and the eggs only develop in fresh water. And Metosarcaria is usually the infective stage, and the floral form is a Sarcaria. Features reflecting adaptation to parasitism. So number 1, organs of attachment develop. So all the fluids, they have suckers. It's just the suckers are at different place and different shape. And also retardation of digestive system. So the digestive system is different than other havings we have learned. And a highly developed reproductive system. So we can see the second point and third point are very common. And first one is in fruits, they all have suckers. This is a table showing intestinal and tissue trematodes. First, we are going to learn clonorhis sinensis. This one was first found in Hong Kong by a chef. So that's why the Chinese name for it is the Chinese name for this is 中华, means Chinese, and 分支稿 is stand for the testes has spread different branches, and which we can see from the picture. The testes has many branches like the carol. And and on the top left two pictures are the pictures of the egg. You can see there's one side is larger and the other side is smaller. Also like the sesame, it's just at the smaller end, smaller side, the pointy side there's a cap, and the intermediate host, very distinguished one for this, is a freshwater fish. Freshwater fish is the second intermediate host. So this one, clonorhis sinensis, is known as the Oriental or Chinese liver flukes because it is distributed throughout Japan, Korea, China, Taiwan, and Vietnam. It is estimated that this species infects more than 30 million humans in these areas. It's a foodborne pathogen, causes clonorhis, and this parasite also infects a number of other animals, including dogs, cats, pigs, and rodents. And these animals serve as reservoirs of infection, so they cause the disease of zoonosis. So this parasite disease is shared by other animals and the human being. And from the list of these countries, you can see these Western Asia countries. Something in common is that people here are very fond of freshwater fish, and sometimes there's a very expensive cuisine using people eat the freshwater fish fresh, not well cooked. So this is one of the reasons why this parasite is very prevalent in these countries. This is a map showing the distribution of the clonorhis sinensis, and you can see in China the estimated number of infected people is 12.5 million. It's a very large population. Morphology. So for adult, the adult is actually very small. It's tiny. It's 1 to 2.5 centimeter. It's flat, and the size and shape looks like a seed of the sunflower or watermelon. It has an oral sucker and at the top, and then there's a ventral sucker at the middle. So, and these two suckers are of different size. The two testes of the male reproductive productive organs are branched. So you can see here at the lower place, this is the testes, and it has many branches, and that's why it has a name in Chinese. The eggs are very tiny. It's one of the smallest helminth egg. And it's light bulb shape which also looks like sesame or watermelon seed. And it has an operculum with distinctive shoulders. And so the smaller side, there's the opening. There's the operculum, and on the other side, which is the rounder, the bottom, there's a spike. There's a spine, or there's a knob on the posterior end, and inside is a meriscedium. This is a scan of the egg under the electronic microscope on the top left, And the lower left and the lower right are the pictures showing the under the light microscope. You can see the operculum and the small knob. The knob is very tiny, and sometimes if the angle is not right, you cannot see it. But usually and all the time, you can see the operculum. This is the comparison of the eggs of 3 trematodes, and we can review after we finish introducing the 3 of them. And this is a picture showing the Saccharia and the Metasacharia. Different stage. And this is the picture showing the life cycle. We can start from the top. So at this time, the freshwater fish are ingested by human hosts, and because the Metasacharia live in the flesh or under the skin of freshwater fish, and so when people are eating the flesh or eating the skin, and then they get inside, and then they travel down the GI system, and they prefer to live in the bile duct. As after some time, they were excreted in the duodenum, and then the adults live in the biliary duct. Finally, the embryonated eggs were passed in the feces and get inside the water. And then in the water, the embryonated eggs are ingested by the snail. And inside the snail, there's several stages that happened. So in the list you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4, and at this time the population is enlarged, and later the Saccharia get outside the freshwater snail, and they are free swimming, and they were eaten or they just find the way to get inside the freshwater fish, and they prefer to live in the skin or the flesh, and later maybe the freshwater fish were ingested by the human being. So key point for the life cycle, they need 2 intermediate hosts. First intermediate host is the freshwater snail, and inside the Maracidium developed to Saccharia in testing. And then there's a second intermediate host involved as freshwater fishes or shrimps. And in the second intermediate host, the Saccharia developed into Metasacharia in the muscles or in the skin. And the infective stage for this liver fluke is the Metasacharia. The infective route is oral consumption of infective stage. And for the life cycle stages, there include adult worm, egg, Maracidium, sporocyst, Rhedia, Saccharia, encysted Metasacharia. And the definitive host is human being, and other than human being, there's cats, dogs, pigs, rats, camels. So the disease is a zoonosis. People get infected when it's raw or undercooked fish or crustaceans. The adult worm, they prefer to live in the hepatic bile duct. But why we're calling this liver flukes? It's because the eggs, because there's many of the eggs were excreted, and then they can block and the bile duct, or suddenly there's many of the there's many of the metasaccharide get inside the body, so they can block the bile duct or the eggs accumulating in the liver, and later on the symptoms can get very heavy, and more symptoms will show up. We'll go to this in later. And now let's look at the intermediate host. The first one is the freshwater snail, and there are different kinds with their scientific names. You don't have to remember all these scientific names. You just need to know that the first intermediate host is the freshwater snail, and the second intermediate host are freshwater fishes and shrimps. Pathogenesis, which means how the disease were caused by the parasite. So the stage responsible for the pathogenesis is the adult worm. And first, when they get inside the body, you don't feel it. And then after they get inside, we understand that the liver fluid, they have this sucker to attach to the residing site. So the suckers can cause some of the irritation, and then there's toxic effect because the parasite, they have some secretions, metabolites, and also there's a biological interference, the nutrition depression. So if a large population of the parasite infecting human being, for sure the people looks very slim, thin, not slim. Pathological consequences of sinensis infection occurs mainly in the intrahepatic secondary bile duct and its neighboring tissue. So first, there's an invasion of the biliary epithelium, and then there's inflammation happens, and then the epithelial cells proliferation and cell inflammation, and then the duct wall were thickened, and then there's oculation. So there's extensive involvement of the tissues, and then finally there's the fibrosis of the liver, and later, after some very long time, the fibrosis of the liver will turn into the hepatocirrhosis. And this is a picture showing adult worm in the hepatic bile duct. You can see many of the cysts. Clinical features. Sometimes, at the beginning, it's asymptomatic, but after a very long time, if the eating habit is not changing, then there's heavy bile duct diseases like the hepatomegaly, jaundice, pancreatitis, bile duct stones, biliary cancer, and there's worm burden reported of doctors find over 70,000 worms. And in juvenile, symptoms are usually more serious because many of the because the worm burden will cause malnutrition, nonoid, anemia, and sometimes cause death. And apart from the chronic impact on the human being, there's acute stage. Acute symptomatic clonorhis is caused by ingesting large number of metasaccharide, and larvae will migrate from the duodenum to bile duct, may produce fever, chill, and GI discomfort, and mild jaundice and liver enlargement. If you do a cholangiogram, and then you can find the dilatation of the intrahepatic duct, small feeding defect, compatible with the presence of adult worm, and occasionally there's a cholangiocarcinoma. And death is rare, but can happen if the general condition of the patient is poor and the treatment is delayed. And next, we can check the chronic stage. And in light infection, the clinical disease seldom result. But if a long-term accumulation, if the patient just continue with the eating habit without showing any change, and there's formation of bowel stone, whose nuclei often are become by eggs and sometimes entire worm, and the bile duct carcinoma and liver cancer, and bile duct obstruction and induced secondary bacteria inflammation, and which may be accompanied by bacteremia, endotoxin shock, hypoglycemia, and jaundice. And also if it's in case of the juvenile, there may be case of nanoid. This is a picture showing a very late stage. You can see the arm. You can see from the arm that this person is very thin, but the belly is huge because of the ascites. And on the right is the picture showing the nanoid kids. They are of the same age, but very delayed development. Diagnosis. So you want to ask for the patient history and check for the symptoms. And with this in mind, if you are suspicious, if liver fluid is suspicious, you can do the stone examination to check whether you can find the eggs, and also you can use the sedimentation method. So in this way, more eggs can accumulate, and then it's easier to see under the microscope. And also, we can use a duodenal aspiration examination for eggs. But the stool examination is for sure easier. Also, there's an immunological diagnosis. You can do the ELISA for specific antibodies or accumulating antigens. Epidemiology. So this liver fluid is distributed in the Far East, including many East Asia, and the Far East part of the Russia. And in China, many provinces can find this parasite and the parasite disease, and the highest prevalence is in Guangdong, and one of the reasons is the dining habit, because in Guangdong province, I don't know if you've been there before, and or you have friends in Guangdong, and because in that province the dining habit has been there for many years. They have the dish which is very tasty and beautiful, because they use the fresh directly taken from the fish, and cut it into very thin slice, and it's almost transparent, and then they put it into different ways in the dish, and then they can dip it into the ginger sauce, or with ginger, eating it with soy sauce or ginger, and this is one of the reasons why in Guangdong province there's many cases. And factors associated with endemics is existence patient and reservoir host. And then there's presence of first and second intermediate hosts in the same water body. And the model of fish breeding is also the contribution. Is also doing the contribution, and dining habit and custom is playing a vital part. Some of the control measurement. So it's better to cure the patient and carriers, and the drug of first choice is the Praziquantel, and hygiene education. So avoid eating raw or uncooked freshwater fish, and when you are cooking, you want to separate the raw and cooked food preparation area. Also, we can protect the fish pond from being contaminated by the feces, and also control of the reservoir host. So pets at home, don't give them raw freshwater fish.